A lifeless body pulled from the rubble, an all-too-familiar scene in the embattled districts of rebel-held East Aleppo. There is no front line in this war. Residential neighborhoods continue to be hit. Buildings collapse. Families killed inside. There were some survivors, this child among them. But hope is fading for the people trapped in what has become an urban battleground. In the past 3 weeks, activists say up to 300 people have been killed, and the toll only rises. A father overcome with grief. Another family torn apart. Last week, the Syrian army said it would reduce its airstrikes to allow people in rebel-held East Aleppo to leave. There were a few days of calm, but there was no corridor for civilians to evacuate to other rebel-held areas. It's not clear why there was a reduction in airstrikes, but it did coincide with mounting international criticism of Damascus and Moscow's actions. Criticism but little action to stop the bombardment of a city under pressure to surrender. Food supplies are running low and medical services are overwhelmed. Doctors Without Borders say that there are only 11 ambulances left for 275,000 people. Hospitals have been hit. Only 35 doctors remain. Pro-government forces who have opened many front lines across the divided city. And Aleppo is not the only rebel-held area under siege and under attack. This is Douma in the Damascus countryside.
The international community remains silent. Look around. These are civilian homes. There are no rebel bases.
The same questions are being asked by the people in Aleppo. Fardous neighborhood was targeted twice in as many days. The latest strike hit a marketplace, and again, civilians were the casualties. This has been the reality for years, and this will only continue since diplomatic efforts to revive the ceasefire have come to nothing. Zana Khuder, Al Jazeera, Gaziantep.
In the latest fighting, 12 people have been killed. State-run media says 4 soldiers and 8 armed men died in clashes over Tuesday and Wednesday. The area is mainly populated by Muslim Rohingya. Security along the nearby border with Bangladesh has been stepped up after 9 police officers were killed on Sunday in coordinated attacks on 3 border posts. 6 suspects are being held in connection with those incidents. 4 years ago, sectarian violence between the Rohingya and Buddhist nationals killed more than 100 people. Tens of thousands of Rohingya were sent into displacement camps across Rakhine State. Rohingya as an ethnic group, and Buddhist nationalists view them as illegal migrants from Bangladesh. The UN is urging troops and civilians to exercise restraint following the latest violence, calling the situation a delicate juncture for Rakhine. A new advisory commission headed by former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan made its first visit to the state in September. The commission was set up by Aung San Suu Kyi's government. She has been criticized for ignoring the plight of the Rohingya since taking office in March. Scott Heidler, Al Jazeera, Bangkok.
This is AP News Minute. Donald Trump might not follow through on his vow to appoint a special prosecutor to go after Hillary Clinton if he is elected president. That's from Kellyanne Conway, Trump's campaign manager. She says he'll wait until he's elected and then decide. At a rally in Greensboro, North Carolina, President Barack Obama smelled his own hand, checking to see if it smelled of sulfur. The conservative radio talk show host has charged the president with being a demon and smelling like one. Obama noted that Donald Trump often appears on that radio show. At the Vatican, Pope Francis renewed his appeal for an immediate ceasefire in Syria. Speaking before a general audience in St. Peter's Square, the pontiff called on those responsible to stop hostilities and allow evacuation of civilians trapped by the conflict. And in a sure sign of things to come, a strong storm hits the mountains of Croatia, dumping nearly a foot of snow. Roads are closed and residents are stranded as a cold spell grips the country. Tom Ritchie, Associated Press, with AP News Minute.
By Wednesday, the protesters outside China's defense ministry had gone, replaced by a heavy police presence. It's still not clear if any of the veterans were detained. Chanting unity is strength, they had demanded better government support for military retirees. There have been other protests by army veterans, but it's believed this was by far the biggest, lasting 12 hours.
They are trying to embarrass the authorities, and therefore this carries considerable risks. But they have also been careful because they never attack the authorities, the leaders. They are simply saying, we have been loyal soldiers, please take good care of us.
It was not reported in China's state-controlled media, and images that briefly circulated on social media were quickly deleted by censors, underscoring their political sensitivity. Protests in China are no longer rare, but they are when they involve former soldiers of the People's Liberation Army, whose loyalty, first and foremost, is to the party, not the people.
It's quite embarrassing for the government, for the party leadership, because the People's Liberation Army is supposed to be very loyal to the party and state.
China's military is the world's biggest, numbering 2.3 million. But last year, President Xi Jinping announced a plan to reduce its size by more than 300,000 non-combat personnel. He wants to transform the People's Liberation Army into a leaner, more capable fighting force, with more focus on the Air Force and Navy, which are both being used to enforce China's territorial claims in the South China Sea. But Tuesday's protest may mean his reforms are running into opposition, amounting to a defiant challenge to his authority. Adrian Brown, Al Jazeera, Beijing.
For you, this is ABC Action News.
He was there to kill me.
All new at 11, an exclusive interview with a man who narrowly escaped his neighbor's rampage. The gunman going door to door looking for victims. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Wendy Ryan.
And I'm Jameson Euler. We have learned tonight it all started with an eviction notice.
Yeah, ABC Action News reporter Cameron Polam joins us live with an exclusive interview with one man who says he would be dead if he hadn't started a new job today. Cameron?
Yeah, Wendy, that's correct. As you can see, the massive crime scene is still taped off in this neighborhood. We've continued to see investigators sweeping through the area, looking to collect any kind of evidence they can from the shooting rampage. Now, one neighbor in particular is feeling extra fortunate tonight. The gunman going to his home, looking to take his life too, but a new job may have kept that from happening.
He had knocked on the door. She opened the door, and he was there to kill me.
Ed LaBounty doesn't feel lucky, just sad that his neighborhood is now covered in crime tape.
I was on my first day at work today, and I was running like a 19-year-old sprinter to get home to make sure everybody was okay.
Pinellas detectives say 65-year-old Larry Hode was angry that he'd been evicted from his home on 46th Avenue North. Determined to get revenge, investigators say Hode opened fire on his roommate and on a painter working outside the home. Next, Hode fired at a neighbor who complained about his previous behavior.
He was angry. I understand he was off his medication. He was drinking, and it's a sad situation.
After that, deputies say Hode came looking for Ed LaBounty. His girlfriend's daughter answered the door, telling the gunman LaBounty wasn't home.
He put the shotgun in her face and said, "Are you sure he's not home?"
The team then says Hode told her to shut the door and lock it. Moments later, she heard gunshots and Hode was on the ground, taken down by a brave deputy who risked his life to protect everyone else's. LaBounty says he's grateful for the brave officer, but he says he feels sorry for the man who may lose his life due to uncontrollable anger.
Like I said, I don't forgive what he did. I have empathy because he has mental disability.
Now you can see there the sheriff's crime scene unit is still here on scene going through all of the evidence they've collected throughout the day. It will not be a quick investigation tonight. Hode is currently undergoing surgery tonight after receiving life-threatening wounds from that deputy in that shootout. We do know that another victim who was shot by Hode is also at the hospital recovering from injuries. Those were also considered life-threatening. We'll continue to update you on that victim's condition throughout the night and on abcactionnews.com. In Pinellas County tonight, I'm Cameron Polam, ABC.
Americans are getting ready for new fighting in Iraq. Iraq's army is preparing an assault on Mosul, the country's second largest city. It has been under ISIS control for 2 years. Holly Williams got rare access to the base where American advisors are helping the Iraqis get ready. She is now in Erbil, Iraq. Holly, good morning.
Good morning. American troops thought they'd left Iraq for good back in 2011, but fast forward 5 years and there are now around 6,000 US service members back here again, preparing for what could be a decisive battle against ISIS. 40 miles outside Mosul, Gayara Air Base was ISIS territory just over 3 months ago. Now recaptured, it's operated by the 101st Airborne Division from Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Anything else going on?
Nearby Camp Swift will be the headquarters for the Mosul battle, where officers from the US coalition and Iraq are working together. Colonel Brett Sylvia did 2 tours of Iraq after the US invasion of 2003, but insisted that this time around, American troops are not here for combat.
That is not the fight that we have today. Today we advise them and we assist them.
So you won't be fighting on the front line?
No.
And yet we've seen Americans lose their lives here over the last few months.
Well, this is a combat environment. It's not to say that it's not dangerous here.
Major General Greg Valesky served in Mosul during the US occupation in 2009. Now he's in charge of American ground forces helping to liberate the city.
What we have seen is the enemy is pretty demoralized right now. Leaders leaving Mosul. And so, we'll enable the Iraqis to go as fast as they need to go.
You're saying that ISIS leaders are fleeing the city, is that right?
We get indications that they are leaving.
Even so, Colonel Sylvia admitted that America's limited role here is sometimes frustrating.
Certainly things are much easier when you're forward and you've got the rifle in your hand and you are maneuvering. You have great control over everything that you're doing.
So it's harder to help the Iraqis than it is just to do it yourself?
Isn't that always the case?
Those US officers told us there are still around 3,000 to 5,000 ISIS fighters inside Mosul, and they are laying explosives to protect themselves. Gail?
Holly Williams reporting from Erbil. Thank you.
That's the first thing. You got to make a new economy. That's what America's about. We're always making new greatness. And we're always doing it by increasing opportunity and widening the circle of people who can seize it. And secondly, I said, Hillary doesn't want to move you up on the totem pole, and she doesn't want anybody to be above you. She wants to tear the totem pole down so we can go into the future together and all rise together. And so I told him, I said, so she asked me to come down here and say, you go on, vote for whoever you want to, but if she wins this race, she's coming back for you because she wants you to go into the future with the rest of us. People need to feel valued, and that's what I want to ask you, all of you. Don't engage in our version of all this screaming. Go out there and look people in the eye who aren't going to vote for her and tell them we still want them to be part of America. Tell them we need them. Look, man, the other guy's base is what I grew up in. I'm basically your standard redneck. I was the first person who ever went to college in my family. I had a grandfather, as I told you, who was a saint. And he and my grandmother fought all the time. The only thing they agreed on was education and civil rights. He had a 6th grade education. She had a correspondence degree in nursing. They knew we were all the same. So I deserve no credit for what I tried to do. I was just raised that way. But I know how they feel. And I'm telling you, the older you get, the worse it is if you look in the mirror every day and you think you can't do anything to change the future. And a lot of you have felt, we've all had days like that, haven't we? Days we can live with, months we can live with. Years, a decade, that's a tough
There's a black eye from this guy, yeah.
Heather Hearn is in shock. Her 11-year-old daughter was struck in the face by a complete stranger while on an afternoon walk with her best friend.
A 29-year-old man was passing them on the sidewalk. They felt a bit uncomfortable, so stepped to the side. And as he passed by, mumbled some words to them. They didn't know what he said, so they questioned what, and he whacked the friend on the side of her face. and almost to the ground.
Heather says that man, Dylan Ferris, then struck her daughter, leaving her right eye swollen and bruised.
Definitely shock and fear, in a sense stripped.
A Good Samaritan saw what happened. As the girls ran away screaming, she called police and followed them to make sure they made it home safely. Thanks to her description, officers were able to catch Ferris heading here to Royer Park.
The first officer got there and saw the suspect and tried to confront him, and the suspect punched the officer. There was a man standing nearby, and he saw the suspect punch the officer, and he immediately ran to the officer's aid. He tackled the guy, took him to the ground, and then helped hold him down while the officer got him handcuffed.
If you are dumb enough to hit a child, it doesn't surprise me that you're going to try to hit an officer.
While Heather is relieved Ferris is in jail tonight, she wants her daughter's story to be a lesson for other children.
If you ever get a feeling, because the girls did have an unsettled feeling as he was walking their way, and I think we all have that intuition built in us, do whatever you can to keep yourself safe and not put yourself in harm's way.